Eggplant rollatini is one of those dishes that's so delicious, it can be served in the finest Italian restaurants, and at the same time, you can make it right in your own home because it's so easy. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to prepare the eggplant, how to make a really simple and delicious tomato sauce, and how to make that amazing cheese stuffing that goes inside. This is a great Italian recipe that really highlights how amazing vegetables can be. Before I get into the cooking video, you can check the description box below if you want the full ingredient list, but enough talking, let's get cooking. The first step to getting this recipe going is getting our eggplant prepped. So we're going to cut the tops and the bottoms off, and then we're going to cut circles that are about a ½ inch thick all the way down. If these eggplants were a little smaller, I might go in a vertical direction, but this is a gigantic eggplant, so we could just cut little rings. We're going to take them and we're going to place these inside of a hotel pan to salt, and salting process is going to help pull out the moisture, make sure that we get really nice, good, soft texture on these eggplants. So we're going to sprinkle on a bunch of salt, and then I'm going to mix them to make sure that the salt's in contact with all the cut part of the eggplant. And now we're going to set this aside and let the salt do its thing and pull the moisture out of the eggplant. We don't have to prep much for our sauce, so we're going to cut up this onion into a small dice. We're going to set that aside. Next, we're going to crush up some garlic. You know I love my garlic, so we're going to crush up about 8 to 10 cloves here. We're going to put a fine mince on them with a nice little rocker chopper action. And once those are all minced up, we're going to put those inside a container set aside so we can make our sauce. We're also going to pull the leaves off of some parsley and rocker chop that all the way down to a fine mince. Team, no parsley stems. Always get rid of the stems. So now that we got our eggplant salted and we got our vegetables prepped, let's head over to the stove and make a really simple and easy tomato sauce. We're going to heat this stainless steel saute pan over a medium heat, and I'm going to add some olive oil and the onions. And we don't want to get any color on these onions, that we just want to cook them down so they start to become translucent and give off their moisture and soften up. So after about 5 to 10 minutes over the low heat, we're going to throw in some garlic. We're going to give that a really nice mix around until it becomes fragrant. And then we're going to squeeze in some tomato paste. And I've been using the stuff inside the squeeze tube. I find it stores much better in the fridge than the stuff out of the can. And once that's all softened up and the moisture and the tomato paste have all come together, we're going to season with a little bit of salt and some fresh ground black pepper. Always use the fresh ground stuff. The pre-ground stuff is just not as good. Now let's start adding some of our canned tomato products. So we're going to go with 1 can of petite diced tomatoes and 1 can of crushed tomatoes. We're going to mix those into our tomato paste, onion, and garlic mixture. Now we're going to season with some Italian seasoning. Some fresh dried oregano out of my mom's garden, out of the Talenti container. This Talenti container is making guest appearances on a lot of episodes recently. We're going to mix that in. And then we're also going to put in a couple leaves of some fresh basil while we still got it out of the garden. And the basil doesn't need a lot of time. Even with the heat of the pan, it's going to wilt really quickly and give its flavor right into the sauce. And now, so this sauce can have a little bit of thin consistency, we're going to put some strained tomatoes from Pomi in there. This is my favorite brand of strained tomatoes. And now this is a complete sauce. We're going to taste to make sure that we don't need anything. So now let's attend to this eggplant. What you'll notice is that the eggplant have given off a lot of moisture because the salt was pulling the moisture out of the eggplant. We're going to set them on some paper towel, and we're going to put some more paper towel on top. We're going to try to pat them dry to get off as much moisture so they're as dry as possible. Then they're going to go right back in the same container to get seasoned. So now we're going to drizzle on some olive oil, and we're going to put some of my base seasoning, which is a blend of garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. You can see the link to the video recipe in the description box. Stuff is so useful. I use it all the time. And then we're going to give this a good mix and make sure that we're getting a well coating of oil and spices. So if you don't add enough oil, you can always add just a little bit more. And we're going to give these the rub down treatment and make sure that each one is well coated with the base seasoning and the olive oil. We're going to spread these out on 2 baking trays, and I've lined the baking trays with aluminum foil and parchment paper to help save on cleanup. This is my go-to setup whenever I'm throwing anything in the oven. So now these are going to go in a 400-degree oven for about 10 to 12 minutes, just so they can soften up before we have to make our rollatinis. Now we're going to shred our cheese for our cheese mixture, and here is some part skim mozzarella cheese, and I'm showing this because I don't think the stuff in the pre-shredded in the bag works out very well, and I got this nifty trick where we use the tower shredder right onto a paper towel. And then we take the paper towel and we put it inside of a container. You got to be really careful to make sure that it all goes in there. And then you just jiggle out the paper towel, and then the cheese goes right inside the container. It doesn't have to turn into a big mess. Voila. That worked out really well. So now let's take some ricotta cheese. We're going to dump this in the bowl. This is going to make an excellent base for the cheese filling for each of these rollatinis. And now we're going to add some pecorino romano cheese. Be sure to measure extremely precisely as I'm doing right now. And I'm just kidding. I'm not measuring anything. I'm kind of eyeballing everything. But if you want exact measurements, those would be in the description box below. We're also going to put in some fresh grated Parmesan cheese and then a really precise amount of that shredded mozzarella cheese that we shredded before. Remember, if you're not cooking by eye, it's going to take forever. So you can look at the measurements in the recipe descriptions, but those are just approximations. They always are. And now we're going to sprinkle in some of my base seasoning again. You can see how useful this stuff is. We just used it twice. And now in are going to go a couple of eggs. We're also going to sprinkle in some of that parsley that we chopped up before to add a really nice color to this filling. And now we're going to give this a really nice mix until everything is all combined equally and evenly. So now that all of the components for this dish are prepped and cooked, let's do the eggplant rollatinis and roll them up, and I'll show you how we dress the dish before we throw this in the oven. So now let's take our sauce that we made before and spread this nice and generously over the bottom of our baking dish. And we don't want to fill the dish up with the sauce, we just want a little bit on the bottom. And after our eggplant has cooked a little bit, we pulled it out of the oven. They're cool enough so that we can handle, and we're going to throw in a big spoonful, and we're going to roll up this fat one and drop it upside down with the ends tucked in underneath. I don't think eggplant rollatini needs to be rolled all the way around. Then you got too much eggplant and not enough filling. When the ends barely touch underneath on the bottom, then you have the perfect amount of eggplant and the perfect amount of filling and the perfect amount of sauce. It's all about making that special bite. So these are going to go down one at a time, and you can see I'm taking my time to be nice and neat. And I'm pushing them down so they take that nice round shape into the baking dish. There we go, and the last one fits in there absolutely perfectly. So now on top, just a little bit of sauce. You don't want this to be overly sauced, so you can see I'm just taking a small spoon and putting a little bit of sauce on top of each one. On top of the sauce, we're going to sprinkle on some of that pecorino romano cheese. You could also use the Parmesan cheese here too. And again, not a lot, just a little. And we're going to do the same thing with some mozzarella cheese now. Just a dab, so as we throw this in the oven, it's going to melt over and really seal everything in. And then every time that you're taking a bite of this, you're getting the flavors from top to bottom. A light spray of oil on top to make sure to prevent any burning. And then these are going to go in the oven for anywhere from 25 to about 35 minutes. And when you pull them out, the cheese should be melted and just slightly brown. This looks absolutely amazing. This eggplant gave off a little bit more water than I'd liked it to, but this is still absolutely perfect. And now we're just going to hand tear some basil right on top to bring this dish home. The smell in the studio is unbelievable right now. And now to plate one, we'll grab one right underneath. And this is the real test to see if we can just get that rollatini right on the plate. And look at this guy. Oh, so beautiful. If you want to make it extra fancy, throw on a little basil leaf. And now look how amazing this dish looks. Entree, appetizer, side dish, I don't care. Absolutely tremendous dish that really highlights how amazing eggplant can be with such simple ingredients. This smells absolutely fabulous. I am super duper excited to try this. You know, cheese, sauce, basil, so good. So we're gonna try to get everything here in one bite. A little bit of everything, and you can see how nice this all stayed together. The eggplant, the cheese sauce in the middle, the sauce on the bottom. That is absolutely fabulous. The texture of the eggplant, it's like, eggplant's one of your meatiest vegetables, so if you don't eat meat, eggplant's a wonderful thing to eat, because how you know that it's really good is that you don't miss the meat. And like, I'm eating this right now, like it eats like a fine steak. This is so good. Wow. You know, it's really nice to cook and like totally nail something, because it's so rewarding when you eat something yummy that you made yourself. So good. And all the textures work really, really nicely here. This is like one of the best versions of like eggplant parm kind of food. That was absolutely unbelievable. I'm gonna plow through a few more of these. If you wanna see more melty cheese stuff on top, check out my air fryer chicken parm recipe. That's really, really nice. Wanna make a really similar sauce, or you can check out my stuffed pepper recipe. That's absolutely fantastic, and I'll see you there.